Hi everyone, Helen Blunden here, or at Activate Learn on Twitter. It is time for another book review, but this time it's going to be different. Why is it different? Because I'm reading a non-fiction book, reviewing a non-fiction book. Now you do know that for some years now, a couple of years, I've just been reading fiction. I got tired of reading non-fiction simply because I got tired of people out there in the internet world reading the same books, sharing the same reviews, reading the same authors telling us what to do, how to do it, when to do it. And I thought, enough, I need to go back to fiction. I need to kind of get my brain into stories and me learning the themes out of the stories, forcing my brain to actually think. So this has been on my shelf since 2014 when it was very first published, and it's from Benedict Carey. He's a science writer, and he said that he wanted to write a book about the science of learning. And I must admit, I had it on my shelf and I thought to myself, oh, I don't want to read a book about brains or neuroscience. It's going to be too heavy. I don't have time for this. But I'm glad I picked it up because it is on how we learn, the surprising truth about when, where and why it happens. And one of the reviews here says that it's a revelation. I feel as if I've owned a brain for 54 years and now discovered the operating manual. And that's how I felt when reading this book. Now, what Benedict does is he provides some of these stereotypical myths when it comes to learning and studying. And I must admit that when I was going through high school and university, and indeed in later years, learning all the time, I had these myths myself. Things like cramming, things like drinking energy drinks, things like staying up all night, having all-nighters, or getting up very early in the morning to study and cram hard. All these are stereotyped myths that are not efficient for learning, and I was doing it all wrong. So as I was reading this book, the pennies would drop, and I think, why didn't I know this from earlier on? I could have at least created a plan now to create a custom personalized plan of the optimum way to learn a new language, or learn my organic chemistry when I went through it, or whatever it is that I was learning. So let's go through some of the things that he talks about in here. The very first one was varying your study routine. I don't know about you, but I always studied in my bedroom or in the library. Those two locations pretty much were stock standard. Now he says if we vary our location, the brain is more likely to work harder to recall those facts, to recall that as memory, and it kind of just sticks in your brain. So varying your study location is a quick tip of making sure that whatever is going into your head will be retained. Another thing he mentioned was the importance of sleep. As a student, I would stay up very late or get up very early. I would have lack of sleep, but I would mistakenly think that that would optimize my hours because I had more hours to study. And in fact, what it was doing was actually exhausting me and tiring me out. What we should be doing is actually keeping our natural sleep cycle. So go to bed the normal time that we go to bed and get up the normal time in the morning. Okay, fair enough. Maybe you want to wake up just a little bit early just to have a quick review, but that's it. Let your body go through its natural sleep cycle because there's a reason it is doing that. The reason is that it's consolidating everything, all the information that it's picked up, and it's going through those cycles and needs to go through the full gamut. It's kind of like doing a rebooting of a computer. You know, you don't want to stop that reboot in the middle of it, or lock it out in some way, or stop it in some way. A third way of optimal learning is through allowing time for practice. And there's a myth going out there that, you know, you've got to do 10,000 hours of practice before you're considered an expert. But that's not actually right. how you practice is just as important as the spacing of the practice. So what he recommends here is that you vary the practice. You don't just repeat something. You just don't play the chords of a piano or a guitar over and over and over again. Do it in some kind of different way. Vary the piece up. Do it in a different way, a different context, because you're forcing the brain to actually think of different applications and contexts to do that practice. Repetition is bad, but different types of practice and spacing that practice out is good for the brain. Now, the other aha for me was the fact that, you know, in our life we get big projects that we need to do. Now, rather than procrastinate and hold off that big project to find a slot of time that you can do it in, the best thing you can do for your brain is actually start that project straight away. The moment you start it is the brain actually just locks into gear, starts thinking about the problem that you're trying to solve or the thing that you want to learn, and then what happens is you can come back to it. And the brain is actually quite easily, it picks up where it's left from. But if you leave it to the last minute, it becomes bigger than Ben-Hur. The brain can't deal with such a huge task, and so you end up failing. So if you have a big project, if you have a big piece of learning you need to do, the best thing you can do is just start, because it ultimately decreases the amount of cognitive overload that you've got. Another thing I loved that he wrote is about the percolation. Now, too often when we learn something new, if we come across a problem we might not know, we scratch our head, we need to have some kind of timeout. This timeout is the brain's way of thinking about it, of mulling it over, of basically thinking of percolation. It's basically percolating, so allow the brain to percolate. I love that. So what that means is those times where we come across a problem, don't stress too much about it. Get up, go for a walk, do something else, go make yourself a cup of tea or something, because the brain is still thinking about it in the background, and something else might happen that you'd pick up cues that then the penny drops. Some of the other things he mentioned was how we write our notes. Now, when I was at university, back in the day before laptops, before computers, I would handwrite all my lecture notes, and I would use a highlighter, and then I would write out those notes again. The way we write our notes is really important, and what he recommends here is the brain science is telling us that we should be writing our own notes. So by all means, you know, you write them down, but it doesn't necessarily mean just because you've written them down, your brain will remember them. You need to then somehow make that into your own words, or explain it into your own words, so that your brain will take it in. So reviewing notes is another good way of thinking about improvement in how we learn. Forgetting. My husband says to me, Helen, as you're getting older, you just forget everything. You forget. I do forget, it's true. But there's a reason. And I'm actually gonna say it to my husband. Benedict Carey says that forgetting is the active display of brain filtering. It's not decay, it's blocking distracting information. He says that it's critical to the learning of new skills and the preservation and the reacquisition of old ones. So that's what I'm doing. I'm forgetting simply because I'm allowing room to be made for the more important stuff. So what if I've forgotten to do the dishes? So that is it. Really great book. Gives you a plan of what you can do and what you can consider if you want to learn something new. Learning can be anything. Could be a new skill, could be a new behavior, could be anything really. But this gives you the tactics of being able to pick it up quite quickly, understand what it is, and get your brain thinking optimally, so that you don't need to stress any further that you need to. Anyway, last words is, he does say that the science of learning is not a science, it's how we live. And that is so true. If you're not learning, you're not living. If you're not living, well, you're dead actually. That didn't work. Okay, bye for now.